Alright, today we're going to do a little talking about introduction to inverse functions. It's going to be super exciting. Hopefully you won't fall asleep as we go over this today. Alright, so one thing we want to do right now is I want you guys to write down this, draw this map, like draw it. Take a look at it right there. Take your time. Draw it out in your journal. Alright, make it nice and neat. We're going to talk about some things. So only write down what's actually in the red boxes so that you know what to do. All right. Now, hopefully you paused the video, wrote it down, and then unpaused it. So right now, what we're going to be talking about is this is all of your inputs. I'm going to put input. These are your inputs. All right, input, and these are your outputs. All right, so if I said, what is f of 1? You would say f of 1 is x. What is f of 2? F of 2 would be z. And f of 3 would be y. So this is no different than what you guys have done with function notation. This right here, this is your domain, and this is your range. All right, so you have your domain and your range. Here's your inputs. These are all of your x values, and all of these are your y values. However, when you're talking about the inverse of f, that is denoted as f to the power of -1, and it's read as f inverse. Thank you for letting me know my Dropbox is almost full. All right, so what does that mean? When we're trying to find the inverse, now we've switched it. Now we are leading with our outputs to our inputs. So now all these values are our outputs, and they are leading to our inputs. So now you're starting with the range, and they're leading you to the domain. All right, so there you go. So you got your output leading to your input. So if I say, what is f? What is the f inverse of x? And that is equal to 1. So now we're going from our outputs back to our inputs. If I say, what is the f inverse of y? We would say that's equal to 3. And what is the f inverse of z equal to? We would say that's equal to a 2. All right, so now basically, as long as you understand that this is referring to the inverse, you know which way to go. Now you're going from your output leading to your input, and it's as easy as that. All right, let's go ahead and go down a little bit more. Okay, which of the following is a true statement? The domain and range of f are the same as the domain and range of the inverse? No, that's not it. The domain of f is the range of the inverse, and the range of f is, so they've been swapped. So we're going to say that. That's it. All right, we're going to scroll down just a little bit. Okay, so a couple of notations you probably want to understand is this right here. If it says, if f of a equals b, then the inverse of b will equal a. Right? So how could I use numbers here? Ready? If I say the f of 2 equals 3, then the inverse of 3 will equal 2. That's another way of writing it. See how easy that is? It's like super easy. So here we go. We're going to test your knowledge now. It's like a mapping diagram. So go ahead and write that sucker down in your journal. Like, man, I'm having to write so much stuff in my journal. Yes, that's how we learn. We write stuff down. If you just listen to me, you're not going to get any better. You got to write it down and practice it. So I'm going to give you some practice problems here, all right? So I'm going to say, what is h of 4? What is h of 6? And what is h of 9? All right? And then over here, I'm going to say, what is the h inverse? What's the h inverse of 3? What is the h inverse of 9? And what is the h inverse of 7. All right, so write those down. All right, pause the video. See if you find the correct answers, and you can press play again and see if you got it right. Or you can just keep listening to me and don't write anything down. It's up to you. All right, so here we go. H of 4. Well, this is your input, right? This is your input. And if we have a 4, it leads to the output of a 3. H of 6. 6 leads to a 9. And H of 9. 9 leads to a 12. So this is what you're used to dealing with function notation. These are your inputs, these are your outputs. Over here, though, what is the H inverse of 3? Well, 3, my output, leads to a 4. What is the H inverse of 9? 9 brings me back to 6. And 7 leads me to 0. So there's your answers. So what's happening here? These are our outputs, and they're leading it to our inputs. Now, the funny thing for me is, like, when people are doing stuff online and they don't even watch my videos and they don't even know how to do it. Always cracks me up inside. All right, so here we go. Moving on down. All right, so let's check our understanding here. Ready? It says, what is the G inverse of 3? What does that mean? I got to go to my output. It leads me to my input. I'm going to type in a -1 and be happy because I'm right. Woohoo! Now, if you get it wrong, you just hit explain. And you can look at it and they explain what happens. Okay? Ooh, now we got a graph. Ooh, I like this. All right, so here we go. We'll do this graph, and then we'll do more than one. Okay, so if you want to, it's a pretty good graph right here. Pretty good graph. Go ahead and graph it nice and neat. I'm going to put some different points here, though. I'm going to put a point right there on this graph. I'm going to put a point right there on the graph. I'm going to put a point right there on the graph. And then I think I'll put a point right there on the graph. So I'm going to write some ordered pairs. Looks like we're at a -3, -7. We are at a -1, -5. So this is -1, -5. This is at a 1 and a -3. 1 and a -3. And then I'm saying this is at a 3 and a 6. 3 and a 6. All right, so now this one says, what is the G inverse of -7? So we're going to evaluate that. But we're also going to evaluate the inverse of 6. We're going to evaluate the inverse of -5. And then we're going to evaluate the inverse of -3. So we're going to evaluate not just one, but 4 different ones. All right, so let's take a look at our graph right here. All right, so when I say, what is the inverse of -7? What I want you guys to do is I'm going to change colors here. I'm going to go red so you guys can clearly see where I'm heading. So right here, would you guys agree right here we're at a -7 on the y-axis? And what is that going to lead us to at -7? What is that? What x value does that lead us to? That leads us to a -3. If I say, what's the inverse of 6? The inverse of 6, this is right here on the y-axis, that's going to lead us down to, oh man, I messed up here. That's not at a 3. Huh. Oopsie. My apologies. That's not a 3 right there. What would you guys say that is? 2.5. Put 2.5, comma 6. So the inverse of 6 is 2.5. That's a much better representation. My apologies right there. All right, let's take a look at the inverse of -5. So -5 is right here, and so if I lead up, where is -5? What's the x value right there, even though you can't see it? -1, so -5 leads me to -1. And last but not least, where is -3? -3 is right here, and that leads us to a +1. here's what I want you guys to write down in your journal. These are all of your outputs, and all of these numbers are your inputs. This is the range, and this is the domain. So that's what you guys need to understand when you're doing this, is now you're going to be looking at the range, which leads to the domain. If you see the inverse of G right here, or the G inverse. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at this right here. Okay? So on this one, we can clearly see the solution of -7 would be -3. Okay? All right, so here we go. Right here it says, what is the inverse of 4? So when the y value is at a 4, what is our x value? What would you guys say? -2. So I'm just going to put -2. Okay? All right, so now here's the last thing we're going to be talking about right here. All right? And this is talking about dealing with a function. So if you guys would, please, could you guys write this down right here? This would be the last thing we get to in this video. All right. So if you write that down, all you have to do is it's saying, hey, this is my y value. What is our x value? So what is it saying our y value is equal to? It's saying it's equal to a 7. So we put 7 equals 3x minus 2. All right. And all we got to do is just solve for x. So we add 2 to this side. We add 2 to this side. And we get 9 equals 3x. And then we just divide both sides by 3. And x equals 9 divided by 3, which is 3. So what is the inverse? What's the inverse of 7 mean? It means, hey, that's your y value. What's your x value? Our x value was a 3. So our x value was a 3. So I'm just going to write in a 3 right there. You see I'm right. And then we have you can't really do the graphical connection, okay, as far as like drawing it, but you guys need to know that graphs always reflect across what? Y equals x. So how do you do that when you're asked to find like the graph that matches it? What you do is you look at the graph and you look at the ordered pairs. So let's look at these ordered pairs. That ordered pair is at a 6, 0. This ordered pair is at a 0, -2. So what do I need to look for? I need to look for new x, y values, which is going to be at a what? 6, not 6, 0, a 0, 6, and a -2, 0. So I'll go and plot those so you see what to do. And this is the last concept of the video. All right, last concept, we just simply plot these points right here, and then you carefully connect the line, and you can see that these would technically reflect across y equals x. So this graph right here would be answer choice B. There's the 0, 6 and the -2, 0. All right? And I will select it. You all have a wonderful day. Okay? And I will do one more. You're more than welcome to go. I'm just going to finish up this real quick. You'll notice that this point is at a 5 and a 1, and this is at 2 and a 7. So now what I have to do, I got to go from a 5 and a 1 to a 1 and a 5, and this is at a 2 and a 7, so I have to go 7 and a 2. So you have to make sure if this is at a 2 and a 7, I got to go to a 7 and a 2. If this is at a 5 and a 1, I have to go to a 1 and a 5. And that's how you guys make the graph. And that's it.